Hello everyone and welcome back to the 3T Path channel. My name is Giridhari. And today I want to talk to you about a subject that is not so easy to understand, but it's very important in many ways to understand, which is the topic of the three subtle elements of matter as given by the Vedas. The Vedas are the ancient sacred texts of India, one of the most ancient of all humanity. And in these texts, material energy is described as having not only the five basic elements, the elements that we actually can study in labs, that science can study, stuff that you can measure, see, weigh, touch, these things, but beyond these, what we call gross material elements, in the sense that they're, solid enough or have enough quality so you can measure them, we have three subtle material elements. They're still from matter. They're still part of this material energy, but they're so subtle you can't measure them, you can't see them, you can't weigh them. There's nothing you can do to get them out there and in a lab and pick it up and show it or something or color something. You can't see them. So these three subtle elements, though, are very important because they give the structure, they create the interface that allows the spiritual soul to then be inside a material body, inside a material environment. And these three elements are called manas, buddhi, and ahankara. So we're going to go through these three today in this class. So let's go. The first thing is manas. Manas is translated as mind. Even the word mind, manas, you can see that it stayed from the Sanskrit and remained in English with mind. So what mind is, you can understand mind as an organ which processes information. Because all this information is coming from the senses. So the Vedas talk about the 11 senses, because you have 5 knowledge acquiring senses like the eyes, the nose, and tongue. And then you have 5 action senses, like they call it, the arms and legs and anus, and your ability to evacuate, that's called a sense as well. So evacuation, sexual, legs, arms. So you have these action senses, you have the 5 action senses, you have the 5 knowledge acquiring senses, but then who's organizing all this information? Who's sending information to these organs? Who's getting information from these organs? The mind is. The mind then is like a computer that's always active, infinitely processing all this data. But different from a computer, your mind gets influenced and works differently according to all the information that it's getting, according to the focus that you bring your mind to. So it gets influenced and it does things differently. So that's why we have to observe the mind to make sure we can follow and accompany these thought processes and these emotions in our mind. The idea is that you can observe the mind because you're not the mind. It's a very important step in psychology as well as in yoga, that you become the observer of your mind, because you're not manas. You're something else. We're going to get to you way later. You're not manas. So therefore you can observe manas. You can observe your mind, and then you can see your thoughts. You can observe your emotions, not identify with them. And thus, because of that, it will give you greater control of your mind. As you may know, one of the major texts of yoga, which we use in this channel, which I have a course of as well, is called the Yoga Sutras, Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, written about 2,000 years ago by the great sage Patanjali. Now, in this Yoga Sutras, Patanjali defines yoga as control of the mind. So yoga is the process of controlling your mind. So this is a very important step to understand that you're not your mind, that your mind is an element of material nature, manas. Okay, so How are you going to control the mind? How will you decide what to do with your mind? Then comes the second element, which is called Buddhi. You've heard of Buddha, same idea. Buddha, Buddhi, same word. It means enlighten, the light, intelligence. So Buddhi is your capacity to process information, to decide, discernment, your capacity to choose what's right and what's wrong, decide what's right and what's wrong, what's good, what's bad. Your capacity to prioritize things, to know what to do. Now, interestingly, in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 3, in the end of chapter 3, Krishna tells Arjuna, say, Arjuna, you have to strengthen your Buddhi. This is a key concept in Bhagavad Gita, in the whole of yoga spirituality. You have to strengthen your Buddhi. And how do you do that? With jnana, with knowledge. You need wisdom and knowledge to have a good intelligence, so that your intelligence can then do the right job of discernment, of knowing what's good and what's bad. And of course, the key point in this acquiring knowledge idea is to really understand reality. The closer you are to reality, the better your Buddhi is going to work, and thus the better job it will do of sorting out all this stuff that's happening in manas. So you need to be close to reality. And for that, the spiritual texts give you all this information on who you are, what you are, where you are, why you're here. There's law of karma, the nature of the soul, the nature of God, the nature of the material world. All this information we get from Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavad Purana, Yoga Sutras. It's to help us understand reality better, and thus be able to better practice our discernment, to be able to recognize what is in fact good and what is bad, what should be done, what should not be done. That's the job of Buddhi, and you need to help your Buddhi, you need to help your intelligence by giving it good knowledge. And of course, this will also apply to just general knowledge of the world as well, just getting the right information, not being fooled by misinformation campaigns, actually trying to get like falling into the rabbit hole of just crazy ideas, but actually really getting trying to really get to the root of proper, trusted, correct information, because that allows your Buddhi to then to work better. It needs information to operate well. Okay, so now we have manas, all that information and control of your body and the information coming into your body. And then you have Buddhi, sorting that stuff out, letting you know what's good, what's bad, what to do, priorities, all that sorting, discernment going on. But then there's one key element missing, which is the last one here, which is Ahankara. So Ahankara is the concept. Ahankara is the concept of making it personal. Ahankara will get all this information and bring it to you. Make it personal. Personalize all this information. So you're seeing something is being seen, but it's not just an image, it's your image. You're hearing something, it's not just a sound, it's your sound. Do you see? It's your discernment, your information. It brings it all to you. It makes it an individual, personal thing. The concept of I, that's why it's translated as ego, which is just the Greek word for I. So it just makes it mine, it brings it to me, it makes it personal. Take a computer. Computers, they're processing. You can have a computer processing images and information, and it can capture images, it can send out signals and do things, and it can sort information out. So it can do all this work of manas and Buddhi. But then what's missing in a computer, at least for now, is Ahankara. It's this making it me. It's my information, individualizing it. So once you have that, and then we'll probably have like real artificial, it's me. This is my thing. You bring it to me. That's what Ahankara does. Now, this is where it gets really interesting, because the whole thing then, all of like the Vedas, the spirituality, it's all going to center around this ahankar, because it's at the top of the pyramid. Ahankar will define what your buddhi does, and your buddhi will organize your mind, and your mind will organize your body. So everything will go back to buddhi. Who are you? Who is this me? Who is this I that's at the top of this whole pyramid? That's the big question. That's where spirituality starts. That's why that's the first thing Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, is to tell Arjuna who he is. Arjuna, you're not your body. You're an eternal soul. And you start giving him information on the nature of the soul, on the nature of your true self. That's why self-realization is so powerful and life-changing. I've had this experience, all my students have this experience, and billions of people throughout time and throughout the world have this experience. When you work on your self-realization, which just means, who am I? Realizing yourself, realizing the nature of your true self. When you figure out who you really are, everything will change. Because then, what's right, what's wrong, depends on who you are. If you're an elephant, your idea of what's right, what's wrong is very different from, let's say, if you're like a businessman in New York. It's very different ideas, right? And if you're, I don't know, an Eskimo, then your idea of what's right, what's wrong may be very different from some kid in Brazil. It's very different because you're just different concepts. Different things are good, different things are bad. They're according to who you are. So what to speak when you take this jump into self-realization, when you activate your spirituality and you understand that you're an eternal soul. First thing Krishna teaches in Bhagavad Gita, everything is different. What's good for an eternal soul is different from what's good for just a material body. What's wrong for an eternal soul is different from what's wrong for just a material body. These things are different. So your whole life changes, your whole paradigm changes of like who you are. Everything becomes different. So ahankara is the key point. It is understanding that ahankara, bringing that ahankara from what's called the false I, the false identification with the body, to the real identification as your true eternal spiritual self. This is the big deal of all of spirituality. This is the point of Bhagavad Gita, of Yoga Sutras, of all these books, is when you just make this change and you understand your nature. And that's also where theism comes in, this understanding your connection, bhakti, your connection with God, because once you understand who you are, to really understand who you are, you have to understand God, because it turns out you're like a spark of God. So if you don't know who God is, then you can't really know who you are, as you are his amsa, to use this term in the Bhagavad Gita. You're a part of God. Krishna says, Mame Vamsa, you're parts of me. So to understand your connection, your true self, you have to understand God as well. So that's where self-realization comes in, because you change the ahankara, which will then change the buddhi, which will then change your manas, your ability to deal with manas, which will then change your action in life through your body, how you behave and live here. So those are the three, manas, buddhi, and ahankara. And these three subtle elements together are what allow the transcendental soul to inhabit and operate within the material sphere, within the material world, within a material body. It's these three subtle elements that make it possible, that make the bridge between Brahman, between spirituality and Prakriti matter. So I hope you understood that. I hope it's clear. If it's not, just leave your questions below. I'd love to hear from you. And have your rest of your day with lots of peace and lots of love.